Welcome into building a scalable, legacy-ready business. I am so excited to have you here and just want to share a really quick bit about me before I jump into the main training. So for those of you that don't know me, haven't met me before, I'm Hayley. I am a business owner, a coach, a mentor, a speaker, but much more than that. I am someone who deeply believes that business should be a tool for building freedom, for building wealth, for building a generational impact. And I have been there, done that. I have built multiple businesses. Some I still own, some I have exited. And so I know the highs and lows and the incredible messy journey that comes with scaling. And some I closed because they didn't work or they didn't light me up enough to go into that exit strategy. But I remember really early on in business, and I thought scaling was just about getting bigger, more clients, more money, bigger, bigger, bigger all the time, because that's what we get sucked into on social media. It's all about six figures, multi six figures, seven figures, who can get to multi seven figures, eight figures. But actually, real scaling isn't just about the more clients, the more revenue, the more. It's a built-in structure. It's about creating a business that can really thrive without you at the center of every little thing. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack today, because what it really takes to build a business is different to what it really takes to build a business that isn't just a cash cow. You don't want a cash cow for now. You want something that is valuable, sustainable, a legacy building asset for you in the future. There is a workbook to go with this video as well. So if you haven't got your hands on the workbook, head to the description and claim your workbook there. So go grab a copy and then we can dive into all of the training. So let's start with mindset, because mindset is the thing that changed everything for me inside my business. In the early years of business, it is so easy to just think month to month because we're in survival. So we're in this survival thinking. So how do I hit my next income goal? How do I survive this when there's not much cash flow coming in? How can I get more clients today? How can I get 3 more clients before the end of the month? How can I get 20 more people applying for a call with me? This is survival thinking. And actually, sometimes it's necessary. Even sometimes later on in business, it's necessary. If you are going to purchase something in the business and you don't want to use your current income, but what you do want to do is use income that you haven't yet made yet. You might need to go into that survival thinking, right, how can I make £2,000 to be able to invest in this thing? And I don't want to use my current money. What can I do to make £2,000 by the end of the month so I can invest in this thing? So sometimes that survival thinking is necessary. But actually, if you want long-term wealth and freedom, you need to move into a legacy way of thinking. So survival is that short-term cash flow, reactive decision making, whereas that legacy thinking is more around building an asset, more around strategic moves, more about thinking for the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, not the next 3, 5, 10, 20 days. It's a little bit like if you think about farming and planting. The best analogy I can think of. So think about you are planting crops in a field. If you grow crops that grow really quickly but die after one season versus planting an orchard. So you can have those crops that one season, have an incredible crop of whatever it is you're growing, but after that season it's gone. And that's survival thinking. Legacy thinking is planting that orchard. It takes so much longer to grow, but once it's thriving, it feeds generations. When you step into that legacy way of thinking, you start to make decisions differently. You create offers and assets that live beyond a one-off launch. You build systems that really replace you in your day-to-day tasks, because that legacy thinking is not having you at the core of everything. You start to invest in and create a brand and positioning that is timeless and lasts. What I would love you to do is just do a little bit of reflection and just slow down at this point and really think. So I would love you to sit with me and just close down your eyes for a moment and just take a couple of deep breaths. So in through your nose, then a really deep exhale out of your mouth. And as you're doing these breaths with your eyes closed, I just want you to think for a moment. I want you to imagine your life 10 years from now. You're not hustling every day. You've got options. You've got consistent leads coming in. You've got your exit strategy planned, however that looks for you. You've got your thriving company. You've been able to move into more spaces that light you up. And what does that life look like? What does that life feel like? How are you moving through it? What are you doing in that space? What feels so good about being in that space? I just want you to bring that feeling back into the present and open your eyes. And we're going to turn that feeling into something tangible. So inside your workbook, you have got a vision mapping exercise. So what I would love for you to do is to really bring into what you've just been visioning. Where do you want your business to be in 5, 10, 20 years? Just literally scribble down whatever comes into your head. There's no limits. No one else is going to see what you're writing. Just write freely without overthinking it. When we allow our logical brain to come in and start to overthink things, we limit ourselves. Because suddenly we're thinking, well, why would we be able to do that? Well, I don't have the knowledge to be able to create that. Well, I don't have the money to be able to create that. I don't have the support to be able to. Why could I do that when this person can't do that? Or, if I wanted to do that, I should have been at this place by now. But throw all of those out the window. Just write what's there. And then the second thing I want you to really think about is what would make your business valuable, even without you there every day? And we're going to dive into this a little bit more, but that might be systems, it might be the brand, it might be the team, it might be your intellectual property, but what is it that makes your business valuable even when I remove you out? And also think about your legacy. So when people speak about the impact of your business, what do you want them to say? What is the legacy that you want to leave? What do you want people to say about you? One of my legacies that I want to leave, one of my big visions, is all around creating businesses that fund generational wealth. Because everything I'm creating is not just for me. Everything I'm creating has a bigger purpose for my family, for my future family that aren't even born yet. That's why when I'm looking at businesses, my own, my clients, I think of them in a way of an asset. For me, that's things like creating saleable assets, it's brand ownership, it's licensing, it's not just sales and income. And this work might feel a little bit like, oh, this is next level. This is like a little dreamy. This feels really good. But you've got to have that first. You've got to have that dream, that vision first, because the strategy comes second once you know what that looks like. So really take some time to play around with this. Take some time to dive into the vision of exactly how that looks for you and how that is going to feel. Because if you know the legacy that you want to create, you can build the strategy to enable it to happen. Doing it in reverse never works. So let's start to look at the strategy side, the tangible stuff, the stuff that you need to do. And there are 5 main pillars that if you want a business that can scale and hold long-term value, because that's realistically what you want to create that legacy, you need to have long-term value, whether that's financial, whether that's impactful, however that looks. The first pillar, the first thing you need is systems and automation, because you cannot scale chaos. You cannot scale if you are the only one who knows how things work. If you are the only one who knows how everything works and I take you out of your business, you don't have a business. And if you are thinking exit strategy of selling a business, the more assets you have, the more processes and systems you have to bring in sales and sales channels you have, them generally, the more valuable your business is. Because if you have a business that relies on one sales process, one sales channel, one sales funnel, it is not as valuable, because what if something happens to that one channel? If you have one that has 3, 4, 5, 10, all of a sudden you're more valuable, because you could lose a few of those. And as long as all the others earn you income, you can expand the others. So really look at what is chaotic in that business. And if I took you out, what would collapse? What could nobody else do? And those are the things that you really need to look at. And that might be through bringing in things like CRM systems so that you can manage your background automations. It might be bringing in Evergreen and some automated sales funnels. It might be having systems for onboarding, delivery, operations. Like, even take over the next week in your business. Every time you're doing something, think, could somebody else step in and run this without needing me for every detail? If the answer is no, write it down, because that is what you need to be able to change over the next period. And that might be something as simple as, I'm going to write a standard operating procedure, which is pillar number 2, so documented processes. Because if you only hold information in your head, it's a liability, because if something happens to you, process is gone. Nobody else can run it. I had 12 years-ish ago now, a serious trauma accident. I was in hospital for a period of months. I was then having multiple operations. I was in a wheelchair. I was on an awful lot of medication, and I was not in a place to run my business. At this point, I was a lot earlier on in the business that I had at that point. But it was just getting to a point of really scaling and growing and making really good money. And it stopped because all of my processes were in my head. I couldn't bring anybody else in to do it. And I was on so much medication, I couldn't tell anybody else how to do it either. So if it's only in your head, it's a liability. You've got to create these standard operating procedures, even down to, this is my business flow. This is how I run my business daily. I post twice on Facebook, once on Instagram, upload one YouTube video, 2 TikToks, whatever that might be. Have those processes down. You know, every week we share 3 value pieces of content on Facebook, 2 reels, 1 live video, whatever that might be. These are the topics for the next 30 days. All of these things, if you want to create a funnel, you know, for example, inside my CRM system, there is a trailer. So if I have a new member of the team come in and I want them to learn how to create the type of funnel I'm talking about, I can just put go to X video, use X template, so that they could go watch the video, go into that template that I've got built for those email funnels, and just transfer, update. You know, typical in email 1, we talk about X, Y, and Z. In email 2, we talk about X, Y, and Z. In email 3, we talk about this, but we also bring in our offer. Whatever that might look like, document every process. It might seem like a lot. It might seem like you're documenting ridiculous things, but actually thinking about this as a long-term legacy, do you want to be doing all of these things forevermore? No, probably not. So document all of your methods. Like I said, the sales funnels, the onboarding, how you onboard clients, you deliver services, how you close sales. Do you have a rough guide, template, blueprint, bullet points, whatever that might be for sales calls? You need to create a business that's transferable and trainable. So I can remember when I first hired my first member of staff, and I literally sat there and was like, how do you not know what I'm thinking? I mean, that's completely ridiculous now thinking about it. But I was like, how do you not know how to do this stuff? Because I just do it. I just do it because it's my business and I built the processes, the systems, the way we do things, but it was all in my head. So it's really important to document those step-by-steps of how you want things to run. And those processes made hiring and growing my business so much easier. Because equally, I could then, when I was interviewing, and I do this so often now when I'm interviewing, I give tasks. Here's one of my processes, do X, Y, and Z. And I could see how quickly they can follow my process. That also really helped me in the beginning because I could see the gaps in my processes. Because I was like, oh, they didn't understand that, and neither did they. Okay, so maybe that means tightening up and tweaking. Pillar 3 is your brand. Your brand is what is magnetic. Now, whether that is personal, whether that is a business brand. Ultimately, the issue with personal brands, and I am not saying do not have one, I'm not saying do not build your business around one. The issue with personal brands is if your exit strategy is literally you exiting the business and you leaving the business and you selling the business as an entirety, that business is your personal brand. If people buy, say you have a course, you launch it 4 times a year, people come in because of your launch strategy, because you showing up on video, you doing your 3-day boot camp and then your masterclass and then selling or whatever it might be. Take you out, are you going to sell? Probably not. There is a business that I worked with at the back end of last year. They were a multi-million-pound business. Their value was next to nothing because the entire business was built around a personal brand. So the only thing she could actually sell was her IP, which actually, compared to the value of what the business was bringing in, made no sense to sell the IP, which was intellectual property. So we've been working together a lot on keeping her personal brand, because absolutely have a personal brand, your personal brand is you, but tweaking it slightly. So the personal brand is not just the business, and the business has its own brand and its own entirety. And then making some changes behind the scenes about how things are delivered and who shows up where and all of those things that are going to really enable her to be changeable within the business. But brands attract and then your product sells. If you have a strong brand that's magnetic, you don't need to be constantly in sell mode because you automatically have a visual identity that people recognize. You automatically have a brand story that they resonate with. And that emotional resonance with your audience makes them buy. Your brand should make people feel something, whether that's trust, inspiration, safety, whatever that might be. Yeah. So really look at your brand. If it's a personal brand, do you also have a business brand? Because if you're exiting the business, they can't buy you. If you're exiting the business, the fact that you're not showing up and selling is going to impact the sales. Therefore, your value has just massively dropped. Pillar 4 is your intellectual property. Your intellectual property is so valuable. And it's anything unique that you've created. So signature frameworks, certifications, trademark processes, licenses, proprietary software, anything that you have created that is unique to you is your intellectual property. And that is all saleable assets. Again, I had another client and she had a personal brand. And under that personal brand, she had 4 businesses, but all of them relied on her. Now, she was at a point where she actually just wanted out. She wanted to retire. She didn't want to be in the businesses anymore. She didn't have any children to pass the businesses on to. She just wanted out. And so what we did was we took her intellectual property and we broke that down. And she was then able to sell those pieces of intellectual property rather than selling her actual business. It gave her the money that she wanted to be able to go off and enjoy, just live her life without being tied to everything. And it made everything she'd worked for worthwhile as well, because we spend so many hours inside our businesses, building our businesses, that we should be rewarded for it. And then pillar 5 is looking at the finances in your business. So not just your revenue, but your profitability, your cash flow, any asset value. The healthier the finances in your business, the more attractive it would be to buyers. But also, if you're going for funding, for investment, for business partners, your financial health is key. So things like making sure that the things you're selling are profitable with a healthy profit margin, making sure that you're building up financial reserves in the bank, making sure that if you were asked, you could produce some clean financial reports. Now, all of these things are so important. Those 5 pillars I've just gone through, no matter what you are doing for your end goal, for that exit strategy, for your legacy growth, like I said, there are so many different options, not just selling. But those 5 pillars, unless you have them, you don't have a legacy business. You might have a business, you might have a great income, but what you have is a cash cow for now, not something that is going to allow you to create that legacy as you move forwards. Like I said, it's not even building the business. Sometimes it's the IP. This is an area where so many business owners leave money on the table because they've built a business that, so many people have got a business that's not necessarily saleable. They've got a business that's not something that they want to pass down, something that they want to do any sort of buyout on. Break it down. Like I was saying about the lady I worked with, break down the IP, because anything you've created uniquely for your business, you can protect it, you can package it, and you can license it. So for example, you can have courses licensed out. You can have brand assets like signature methods, certifications, things like that licensed out. If you've got frameworks and they are exclusive to you because they are protected in some way, you can license those out. I have a leadership platform for large international corporate businesses, which is licensed out on a licensable, I can't speak, licensable system. And they license that for 12 months. I don't need to add in more hours, add in more clients or anything else. I just need to license that out for 12 months. And that gives me 12 months worth of income. And they can have everybody going through that system. I have another licensable system currently being created at the moment from the frameworks that I already have, that is just being pulled together so that, again, that can be licensed out, but can be licensed out to a different market. Those licensable assets that you have created are saleable assets because they don't rely as much on your business, as much on you being in the business, because they are more future-proofed. Thinking of the business as a whole and your brand's ability to evolve, and your business's ability to evolve as well. Legacy businesses are not businesses that stay stuck. They are businesses that pivot and grow with the world around them. If you think over the last 6 years, how much business has changed, how much the online space has changed, how much, COVID had a huge impact on this, not just COVID, but lots of other things since, the way that the financial economy's changed, the way the changing of the governments have changed. All of these things have caused huge changes in how business happens. Back to the back end of 2019, majority of my clients were in person. I had some online, but generally if I'd said to clients, let's go on Zoom and talk, or let's go on Teams and talk, they were not that interested unless they were clients overseas. And even then, they would much prefer for me to go to them. COVID hit, the pandemic struck. All of a sudden, all of my clients went online. The whole world went online. How we do business is different. Creating that licensable model, like I was talking about, so much easier. So much easier because people are looking for things like that. You've got to be able to pivot and grow with the world around you. So all the other things to really do is a quick health check on your business. So things like, are you still solving problems that are relevant for your audience now? Because what is relevant for your audience now is not going to be what was relevant for them 12 months ago. So what is relevant for your audience now? Are you consistently coming back and evaluating your brand and your values and your positioning to make sure that you are fresh, to make sure that you are not losing your core essence, but you are staying with what people want now? Are you building a genuine community around your brand values? And again, community is evolving. You know, up until this year, I had a really large Facebook group, and I have now closed that Facebook group because that genuine community feel had been lost, because within that community, the algorithm had taken over, and I was not having those genuine interactions that really sat with how my brand values were. You know, if you think about companies like Apple, for example, they evolved from simply doing computers to doing phones to now doing, you know, watches and all different kinds of wearables. But their brand essence, the innovation, creativity, empowerment has all remained consistent. You know, look at what your brand essence is, keep that as your consistent, but really look at where you need to pivot and where you need to evolve, because your business should be rooted in your mission, but your methods should be flexible. So really think about what your brand needs to do to evolve and stay powerful for the next 5 to 10 years. Like, what is it that is the essence that's going to stay, but what is it that it needs to do to evolve? Because there are constant changes. Like, look at the way AI is taking over. If you'd have asked me 3 years ago, even, would I be developing my business using AI in the way I'm using it, my answer would have been absolutely no way. There is no way I'm going to be using that sort of technology. There is no way that technology is going to be good enough for me to feel comfortable using it. If you'd asked me 2 years ago, would I be creating an AI-based offer? I'd have absolutely said no. Yeah, I am in the process at the moment, just finished qualifying, in the process at the moment of creating the most incredible VIP experience with AI at the heart of it. The world is changing so fast. You're sticking with the AI theme. In 3 years, 5 years, the world is going to look very different because of the use of AI. So not just with AI, but what else is happening in the world that is causing you to need to pivot and change. And then when you're thinking more into that exit strategy and where you want to be taking the business, what you want to be doing with that business, like really dive into how you want that to look. So there are loads of different kinds of exit strategies. I am going to dive into a handful of them. So things to think about are why you want to exit the business, because that will have a big impact on how you exit the business. So why do you want to exit the business? Do you have time scales on this? So when you're looking at creating this legacy business and this exit strategy, do you have a time scale? And the other thing actually that I didn't mention earlier on is making sure you've got all your legal documentation and contracts together. Because that's one thing that people will want to see, is to make sure that your business is covered. Generally, what people want to know when it comes to any sort of an exit strategy is that the business is healthy, that the business is running at a profit, that the business is an asset, that it is being run in the right way, that it is being run legally, that it is being run under regulation. The most common exit strategies are either a third-party sale. So you might sell shares in the business, you might sell the business as a whole. Okay, so you sell either the business or you sell shares within the business. It might be that you become an IPO, so you go on the stock exchange and sell that way. It might be that you do a management takeover, so you could retain a share, but the majority of the business is then bought by a management team who come in and manage the business, and you just have a share within the business. It might be that you have an asset sale. So you sell those assets that I was talking about, your trademarks, your assets, your IP, whatever that might look like. The things I would say to really consider, these are the main considerations, almost like a checklist of considerations, because this will help you look at, right, which decisions are best for me? Because there are probably going to be some that you look at when you go through this checklist I'm going to run through that you think, oh yeah, I've not got X, Y, and Z, therefore that one's out. And I don't want to build X, Y, and Z, therefore that one's definitely out. So the first thing that you need to think is how people buy. So if you are an agency or a personal brand, effectively you're buying goodwill. Because if you're an agency, you're buying contacts. If you are a personal brand, you are buying the goodwill that these people in this community are going to stay with you when this person leaves. So if you are buying contacts or goodwill, it is really affect your value. If you are buying a brand, it is much more valuable. And that doesn't mean you, like I said before, you can't have a brand and a personal brand. You need to be able to show consistent growth of income. You need to be able to show that your profits have consistently increased. You need to be able to show that you have a customer base. Ideally, you need to be able to show that you have longer term contracts, payments, whatever that looks like. That you've got tangible assets. If you have tangible assets, the business is more valuable because you have an asset in it that's worth money. But equally, you can have valuable intangible assets, things like email lists, social media, brand recognition, awards, all of those things. They are all more valuable if they're tied to a brand rather than tied to a person. You know, if you've got any legal issues, making sure they're resolved. If you've got non-payers, refunds, the less of those that you have in the 12 to 24 months prior to whatever exit strategy you choose, the better for the business. Like I said, being able to take you out. So I need to be able to come into your business for it to be at its most valuable point. I need to be able to come into your business, pick you up, take you out, replace you with somebody else, and for the business to still continue. So like I said, having those standard operating procedures, and having things like a support team there, and onboarding protocol for those staff, specifications for those staff, making sure other people know how to do things, having that brand narrative there, diversification of how you bring in sales. And ideally, I know I was sort of saying 12 to 24 months, but if you have 3 to 4 years of really strong financials, you are going to absolutely maximize. If you have a year to 2 years, it will still be fine. Making sure that any due diligence checks have been done on shareholders, registers that you need to be on, insurances, assets, things like that, because when you are getting ready to exit a business, everything will be picked through. So it's so much easier to have everything in place beforehand rather than have to run back and forth. So now it's time for you to bring all this stuff into action. There is an action plan in your workbook. So you can start to write down like the 3, 4, 5 moves that you're going to make based on this training. You know, and that might be the systems that you're going to create or automate. It might be the IP that you're going to package up or protect. It might be the financials that you need to go and look at. It might be the brand refresh that you've been looking at, but you were not sure what to do. Now, the thing to remember is legacy isn't built overnight. And like I said back at the beginning, sometimes we're going to need to go into that cash cow moment of how can I make this amount of money this month? How can I make this amount of money in this quarter? That doesn't take away from the legacy building, providing you go back to it. So legacy isn't built overnight. But legacy is built by those who take consistent action. It's built by those who take bold steps, who take risks, and who do it over and over again, because do you know what? We all fail, but it's learning from those failures. Okay. I would love for you to keep this momentum going. And so I am offering everybody a complimentary call where we can look at those unique opportunities for you. So if you want to go deeper, really look at building that wealth, scaling without limits, building out that business that is a true legacy and generational impact. The link for being able to grab that call is in the back of the workbook. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for being here. Remember, you are not just building a business, you are building a movement, you are building a legacy. And I am so, so excited to see where you take this next.